I'm staring at this thick envelope of legal papers while my 3-month-old son cries in his crib. The documents feel heavy in my hands, heavier than they should. My husband Liam's voice echoes in my head. I'm done choosing to believe you, Bree. All because I refused to pick sides between him and my best friend Jason. All because of one harmless joke that somehow destroyed everything I thought I had built. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The dinner party was supposed to be perfect. I had spent all afternoon cleaning our small apartment, making sure everything looked just right for Liam's colleagues. The dining table was set with our wedding china, candles flickering softly, and I had even managed to shower and put on makeup despite Eli's constant fussing. The lasagna smells incredible, Bree, Jason said, walking into our kitchen with a bottle of expensive wine. He always brought the good stuff, unlike Liam, who grabbed whatever was on sale. And you look amazing. Motherhood suits you. I felt my cheeks warm at the compliment. Thanks, Jace. You're such a sweetheart. I touched his arm briefly, enjoying the way he always made me feel seen, appreciated. Liam's in the living room with the baby if you want to say hi. Jason nodded and headed toward the living room, where I could hear Liam talking quietly to Eli. My husband had been so distant lately, consumed with work and seemingly oblivious to how hard I was working to keep our household running. Between my job as an administrative assistant and taking care of a newborn, I was exhausted, but Jason always noticed my efforts. Hey man, how's fatherhood treating you? Jason's voice carried from the living room. Good, yeah. Tiring, but good, Liam replied, his tone polite but reserved. He'd never warmed up to Jason the way I'd hoped. They were so different, Liam quiet and analytical, Jason outgoing and emotionally available. The other guests arrived shortly after, 2 couples from Liam's software engineering firm. I played the perfect hostess, making sure everyone's wine glasses stayed full, laughing at the right moments, asking interested questions about their work projects. But I noticed how Liam barely looked at me all evening, how he seemed more engaged talking to his colleagues than he'd been with me in weeks. This is delicious, Brianna, said Michelle, one of the wives. How do you manage cooking like this with a newborn? Oh, Jason actually helped me prep earlier, I said, smiling at my best friend. He's been such a lifesaver since Eli was born. I don't know what I'd do without him. I caught Liam's quick glance at Jason, something flickering across his face that I couldn't quite read. Irritation, jealousy. I pushed the thought away. Liam was being ridiculous if he was bothered by Jason helping out. Where was he when I needed groceries picked up or someone to hold the baby while I showered? As we moved to dessert, little Eli started fussing in his bouncer. Jason immediately got up and scooped him into his arms, making silly faces that had our son calming down almost instantly. Look at that, I laughed, feeling genuinely happy for the first time in weeks. He's got the magic touch. Eli loves his Uncle Jason, don't you, baby? Jason bounced Eli gently, and I had to admit they looked sweet together. Jason's dark hair and warm brown eyes, Eli's still developing features that seemed to change daily. My son gazed up at Jason with that focused baby stare, and something playful bubbled up inside me. You know, I said, grinning at the group, sometimes I think Eli looks more like Jason than Liam. Must be all that quality time they spend together. The words left my mouth before I really thought about them. I was just being silly, making conversation, trying to keep the mood light. But the silence that followed felt like ice water down my spine. Michelle's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. Her husband Tom cleared his throat awkwardly. Jason's face went bright red as he quickly handed Eli back to me. Bree, Liam said quietly, his voice carrying a warning I'd never heard before. What? I laughed, trying to salvage the moment. It's just a joke. Come on, you have to admit they both have those same expressive eyes. But Liam wasn't laughing. He was staring at me with a look I couldn't decipher. Hurt, anger, disbelief all mixed together. Can I see you in the kitchen for a minute? My stomach dropped, but I kept smiling. Sure, honey. I passed Eli to Michelle and followed Liam into our tiny kitchen, Jason's worried eyes following us. What the hell was that? Liam's voice was low but intense. What do you mean? It was just a joke, Liam. Everyone knows Eli is your son. Do they? Because you just suggested to my colleagues that our 3-month-old baby looks more like your best friend than his actual father. I rolled my eyes. You're being dramatic. It was harmless. Harmless? Liam's voice cracked slightly. Bree, do you have any idea how that sounded? How that made me look? Like what? Like you're secure enough in your marriage to not get jealous over nothing. I was getting defensive now, my voice rising. God, Liam, when did you become so paranoid? When my wife started making jokes about our baby looking like another man. He ran his hands through his hair, looking genuinely distressed. When that same man has been here more than I have since Eli was born. When you talk about him like he's more helpful than your actual husband. Maybe because he is. The words exploded out of me before I could stop them. When's the last time you helped with dinner prep? When's the last time you brought me flowers or told me I looked nice? Jason notices when I'm struggling. Jason appreciates what I do. Liam stared at me like I'd slapped him. Jason, do you hear yourself right now? I hear someone who's grateful to have a friend who cares about her well-being. A friend. Liam's laugh was bitter. Right. We stood there glaring at each other, the sounds of awkward conversation drifting in from the dining room. Finally, Liam shook his head. I can't do this right now. Not with guests here. We returned to the dining room, both of us forcing smiles that didn't reach our eyes. The rest of the evening dragged on painfully, with stilted conversation and early departures. Jason lingered after the others left, clearly wanting to talk, but Liam's cold stare sent him packing with a quick goodbye. After the door closed behind the last guest, Liam and I stood in our living room surrounded by dirty dishes and the wreckage of what was supposed to be a perfect evening. I'm sleeping at Sarah's tonight, Liam said quietly, referring to his sister. Seriously? You're going to leave me alone with the baby because of one stupid joke? It wasn't just a joke, Bree, and we both know it. He disappeared into our bedroom and emerged 10 minutes later with an overnight bag. I stood there holding Eli, watching my husband pack up his life like it meant nothing. This is insane, Liam. You're overreacting to nothing. He paused at the door, looking back at me with eyes I barely recognized. If it was nothing, you wouldn't have said it, and you sure as hell wouldn't be defending it. The door slammed behind him, leaving me alone with a fussing baby and a sinking feeling that I'd just crossed a line I didn't even know existed. 3 days. 3 days of radio silence from my husband, and I was starting to panic. My calls went straight to voicemail. My texts remained unread. It was like Liam had vanished off the face of the earth, leaving me to handle everything alone. I sat in our living room, Eli finally asleep in his swing, staring at my phone. The family group chat that usually buzzed with daily updates had gone eerily quiet. Even Liam's parents, who typically sent daily photos and check-ins about their grandson, had stopped messaging. My phone buzzed with a text from Jessica, my oldest girlfriend. How are you holding up? Heard Liam staying at Sarah's. Of course she'd heard. Sarah probably told everyone in the family what a terrible wife I was, how I'd humiliated her precious brother in front of his colleagues. I could picture the whole family sitting around Sarah's kitchen table, dissecting my character, painting me as the villain. I called Jessica immediately. Jess, thank God, I feel like I'm going crazy here. What happened, Bree? Sarah's version was intense. I launched into my side of the story, explaining how Liam had completely overreacted to an innocent joke, how he was being controlling and jealous, how unfair it was that he'd abandoned me with a newborn over nothing. But Bree, Jessica said carefully, maybe think about how it sounded from his perspective, saying your baby looks more like another man. That's pretty loaded. It was a joke. Everyone knows Eli is Liam's son. I would never... I trailed off, not wanting to finish that sentence, not wanting to examine too closely why the words had come so easily. I know you wouldn't cheat, Jessica said quickly. But maybe Liam's feeling insecure about how much time Jason spends there. You do talk about him a lot. Because he's my friend, because he's been supportive when my own husband has been distant and cold. There was a pause. Bree, can I ask you something? And please be honest with me. Do you have feelings for Jason? The question hit me like a physical blow. What? No. Jessica, how can you even ask me that? Because I've watched you light up when you talk about him. Because you compare Liam to him constantly. Because that joke the other night, it came from somewhere, Bree. I felt tears stinging my eyes. I can't believe you're taking his side too. I'm not taking sides. I'm trying to understand what's really going on here. After I hung up with Jessica, I felt more alone than ever. I tried calling my mother, desperate for someone who would validate my feelings, tell me I wasn't crazy. Honey, men are just sensitive about these things, Mom said dismissively. Liam's probably feeling inadequate because he's not as social as your friend. Give him some time to sulk, and he'll come crawling back. But what if he doesn't? What if this is really it? Don't be dramatic, Brianna. You made one little joke. If he can't handle that, maybe he's not as mature as you thought. Her words should have comforted me, but they didn't. Something felt fundamentally broken, and I couldn't shake the feeling that everyone was seeing something I wasn't. That evening, I posted a vague status on social media. Being a single mom is harder than I thought. Some people just can't handle strong women who speak their minds. The likes and supportive comments from acquaintances felt good, validating. But I noticed that Jessica didn't like it. Neither did Sarah, obviously. In fact, most of Liam's family and our mutual friends seemed to be avoiding my posts entirely. On the fourth day, I finally broke down and called Sarah directly. Sarah, please. I need to talk to Liam. This is getting ridiculous. Ridiculous? Sarah's voice was ice cold. You think what you did was ridiculous? It was a joke that got blown out of proportion. Your brother is being incredibly immature. My brother, Sarah said slowly, is devastated. Do you understand that? He's not angry, Bree. He's heartbroken. He thinks his wife might be in love with another man. That's insane. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been having an emotional affair for months. Jason's there all the time. You talk about him constantly. You compare them. And then you make a joke about your baby looking like him. What exactly did you think would happen? I thought my husband would trust me. I thought he'd know me better than that. Maybe he does know you, Bree. Maybe that's the problem. The line went dead. I sat there staring at my phone, Sarah's words echoing in my head. Emotional affair. The term felt foreign, wrong. Jason and I were just friends. Yes, he was supportive and attentive, but that didn't mean anything inappropriate was happening. Did it? I scrolled through my text messages with Jason, looking for evidence to support my position. But as I read through weeks of conversations, something cold settled in my stomach. The messages were frequent, daily. I complained about Liam constantly. I praised Jason for being understanding, caring, everything Liam wasn't. Thanks for listening today. Liam just doesn't get how hard this is. You're such a good friend. I don't know what I'd do without you. Wish all men were as thoughtful as you. Taken individually, the messages seemed innocent, but together, they painted a picture I didn't want to see. A picture of a wife who had slowly, gradually, started turning toward another man for the emotional support her husband should have been providing. But that wasn't my fault, was it? If Liam had been more attentive, more present, I wouldn't have needed Jason's support. If Liam had made me feel appreciated and valued, I wouldn't have sought that validation elsewhere. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number, but I recognized Liam's words immediately. We need to talk. I want answers. Be ready. My heart started racing. After 4 days of silence, he was finally ready to communicate. Maybe we could work this out. Maybe I could make him understand that he was overreacting, that our marriage was worth more than one misunderstood joke. But something in the tone of his message made me uneasy. This didn't sound like the Liam I married, the gentle man who avoided confrontation. This sounded like someone who had spent 4 days thinking, planning, preparing for war. I looked around our apartment, at the dishes I'd been too depressed to wash, at the laundry piling up, at the life we'd built together that suddenly felt fragile as glass. Tomorrow, everything would change. I could feel it in my bones. I just didn't realize how much. I met Jessica at our usual downtown cafe, desperate for a friendly face and some perspective. Eli was fussing in his carrier, and I felt like I hadn't slept in days. The bags under my eyes told the story of a woman whose world was falling apart. "You look terrible," Jessica said, not unkindly, as she slid into the booth across from me. "Thanks. That's exactly what I needed to hear." I tried to laugh, but it came out hollow. "Liam's coming over tonight. He wants to talk." Jessica stirred her coffee slowly, studying my face. "What are you going to tell him?" "The truth. That I made a stupid joke and he's blowing it completely out of proportion. That if he'd been more present in our marriage, none of this would have happened." "Bree." Jessica's voice was gentle but firm. "I need you to really think about what I'm going to ask you, and I need you to be honest with me and yourself." I felt my defenses rising. "Okay. Are you in love with Jason?" The question hung between us like a bomb waiting to explode. I opened my mouth to deny it immediately, but something in Jessica's eyes stopped me. She wasn't asking to hurt me. She was asking because she cared. "No," I said finally. "I'm not in love with him. But you have feelings for him." It wasn't a question this time. I looked down at Eli, who had finally settled down and was gazing up at me with those big, trusting eyes. Liam's eyes, I realized with a pang. They were definitely Liam's eyes. I care about him. He's been a good friend when I needed one." "That's not what I asked." I felt tears starting to form. "I don't know, Jess. I honestly don't know. Everything's so confusing right now. Liam's been so distant since the baby came, so wrapped up in work and stress. Jason makes me feel seen, appreciated, like I matter. And you don't feel that way with Liam?" "Not lately. It's like he looks right through me. Like I'm just this thing that takes care of the baby and keeps the house running. Jason actually talks to me, asks how I'm doing, brings me little gifts, remembers things I tell him." Jessica nodded slowly. "Bree, do you realize what you just described? A good friendship? An emotional affair?" There was that phrase again. I shook my head vigorously. "No, that's not. We've never done anything inappropriate. We've never even kissed or held hands or anything physical. Emotional affairs aren't about physical intimacy, Bree. They're about giving someone else the emotional energy and attention that should go to your spouse. They're about sharing your problems with someone else instead of working through them with your partner." I felt like I was drowning. "But Liam doesn't want to hear about my problems. He just shuts down when I try to talk to him about how hard things have been." "Have you tried? Really tried? Or have you just been venting to Jason instead?" The question hit me like a slap. I thought about all the times I'd felt frustrated with Liam, all the times I'd immediately texted Jason instead of confronting my husband directly. It had been easier, less confrontational. Jason always validated my feelings, always took my side. I thought I was just being a good friend. "Honey, I know you didn't mean for this to happen, but think about it from Liam's perspective. His wife is constantly talking about another man, praising him, comparing them, and then makes a joke about their baby looking like this other guy. How would you feel?" I would feel devastated. The realization hit me like a truck. If Liam had been doing with another woman what I'd been doing with Jason, I would have been furious, heartbroken. I would have felt betrayed, even if nothing physical had happened. "Oh God," I whispered. "What have I done?" Jessica reached across the table and squeezed my hand. You made a mistake. A big one, but not necessarily an unforgivable one. The question is, what are you going to do about it? I don't know. I don't even know if Liam will listen to me at this point. You need to be completely honest with him. No deflecting, no blaming him for being distant, no minimizing what happened. You need to own this completely and figure out if you want to save your marriage or not. Of course I want to save my marriage. Do you? Because if you do, that means cutting Jason out of your life completely. No more texts, no more visits, no more emotional support from him. Are you prepared to do that? The thought of losing Jason felt like losing a limb. He'd become such a central part of my daily life, my emotional support system. But as I looked at Eli, at this tiny person who deserved parents who were committed to each other, I knew what I had to do. Yes, I said, though my voice shook, if that's what it takes. Jessica smiled sadly. I hope it's not too late, Bree. I really do. That evening, I paced our apartment waiting for Liam to arrive. I'd rehearsed what I wanted to say 100 times. I would apologize sincerely, acknowledge that I'd been inappropriate with Jason, promise to cut contact with him, and beg Liam to give our marriage another chance. When the knock came, my heart nearly stopped. I opened the door to find my husband looking like a stranger. He was thinner than when he'd left 4 days ago, his clothes wrinkled, his eyes red-rimmed but determined. "Hi," I said softly. "Hi." He stepped inside but didn't move toward me. "Is Eli sleeping?" "Yes, I just put him down." We stood there awkwardly like teenagers on a first date. This was the man I'd shared a bed with for 3 years, the father of my child, and suddenly I didn't know how to talk to him. "Liam, No." His voice was quiet but firm. "I need to talk first. I've spent 4 days thinking about this and I need you to listen to me. Really listen." I nodded, settling onto the couch. He remained standing, pacing slightly. "That joke you made the other night? It wasn't just a joke, Bree. It was the culmination of months of feeling like a stranger in my own home." "Liam, please, let me finish." He stopped pacing and looked directly at me. "I know I've been distant lately. I know I've been stressed about work and not as present as I should be. But instead of talking to me about it, you turned to Jason. Do you know how that feels? To come home and hear my wife talking about another man like he's her hero? I felt tears starting, but I forced myself to stay quiet. I've watched you light up when he texts. I've listened to you compare us constantly, and I always come up short. I've seen you put more effort into looking nice when he's coming over than you do for me. And then, in front of my colleagues, you suggested our son looks more like him than me. His voice cracked on the last sentence, and I saw the raw pain I'd caused written all over his face. I need to know, Bree, are you in love with him? The question hung in the air between us. I could lie, minimize, deflect, but Jessica's words echoed in my head. Complete honesty. I don't know, I whispered. I honestly don't know anymore. Liam closed his eyes like I'd physically hurt him. When he opened them again, something had changed. Then we have nothing left to talk about. Wait, Liam, please, I want to fix this. I'll cut contact with Jason completely. I'll do whatever it takes. It's too late for that, Bree. You just told me you might be in love with another man. How am I supposed to come back from that? He headed toward the door, and I felt my entire world crumbling. Please don't leave me. Please don't give up on us. He paused at the door, his hand on the knob. I'm not giving up on us, Bree. You already did that months ago. I'm just finally accepting it. After he left, I collapsed on the couch and sobbed until I had no tears left. I'd been so focused on defending myself, on being right, that I'd never stopped to consider how deeply I'd wounded the man I'd promised to love and honor. And now it might be too late to take any of it back. I spent the next day in a fog of regret and desperation. Every time my phone buzzed, I hoped it was Liam, but it was always someone else. My mother asking for updates, work emails I couldn't focus on, Jason texting to check on me after hearing about the separation through mutual friends. I stared at Jason's message for a long time. Hey, heard about you and Liam. I'm so sorry. If you need anything, I'm here for you. 6 months ago, that message would have felt like a lifeline. Now it felt like poison. I could see it clearly for what it was, and what I'd allowed it to become. The inappropriate intimacy, the emotional dependency, the slow erosion of my marriage boundaries. I deleted the message without responding. When Liam texted that he was coming over to talk again, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe he'd had time to cool down, to reconsider. Maybe we could still work this out. But the man who walked through my door that afternoon was not the same person who had left in pain the night before. This Liam was calm, organized, and terrifyingly methodical. "We need to discuss some practical matters," he said, setting a folder down on our coffee table. "Practical matters?" "Custody arrangements for Eli, division of assets, how we're going to handle this separation." The word separation hit me like a physical blow. "Liam, please, can't we try counseling first? Can't we—" "I spoke with a lawyer yesterday." The room went silent except for the sound of my heart breaking. "A lawyer?" I needed to understand my options, our options. He opened the folder and pulled out several documents. "I've documented everything, Bree. The timeline of your relationship with Jason, the frequency of his visits, the messages you've sent about me to your friends." My blood ran cold. "You've been spying on me." "I've been paying attention, something I should have done months ago." He spread the papers out on the table like evidence at a trial. "Would you like to see what your marriage looks like from the outside?" I didn't want to look, but I couldn't help myself. There were printed screenshots of my text conversations with Jessica, where I'd complained about Liam constantly. Calendar entries showing Jason's visits, 3 or 4 times a week for months. Even receipts from restaurants where Jason and I had grabbed lunch together, dates I'd forgotten about, but that painted a clear picture of an ongoing emotional relationship. "This is insane," I whispered. "You're making this look like something it wasn't." "Am I?" Liam's voice was deadly calm. "Let me read you some of your own words, Bree. These are texts you sent to Jessica over the past 2 months. He picked up a paper and began reading in a flat, emotionless tone. "Liam just doesn't understand me like Jason does. Wish my husband was half as thoughtful as Jay. Sometimes I think I married the wrong man. Jason brought me flowers today just because. When's the last time Elle did something like that?" Each quote felt like a knife twisting in my chest. Hearing my own words read back to me, I could see how they sounded, how they revealed the slow dissolution of my loyalty to my husband. Those were private conversations. I was just venting. To another woman about another man. "You were building a case against me, Bree, justifying your feelings for Jason by cataloguing my failures as a husband." I wanted to argue, but the evidence was right there in black and white. I had been doing exactly that. "And then there's this," Liam continued, pulling out another document. Jason's credit card statements, which he provided voluntarily when I asked. "You talked to Jason?" My voice came out as a squeak. "Oh, yes. We had a very interesting conversation. Did you know he's been in love with you since college? Did you know he's been waiting for you to leave me?" The room started spinning. "That's not—" He never said. Of course he didn't say it directly. He's smarter than that. But he's been playing a long game, Bree. Being the perfect friend, the supportive shoulder to cry on, the man who's everything your husband isn't. And you fell for it completely. I felt like I was going to be sick. I never meant for any of this to happen. But it did happen, and now I have to decide what to do about it. Liam gathered up the papers and put them back in the folder. "I'm filing for legal separation. I want primary custody of Eli during the week, with you having weekend visitation. You can't take my son away from me." "I'm not taking him away. I'm protecting him from an unstable situation. You've been having an emotional affair for months, Bree. You told me last night you don't know if you're in love with another man. That's not a stable environment for a 3-month-old baby. I'll fight you on this. I'll get my own lawyer." "That's your right, but I should warn you, Everything I've shown you today will be presented in court if necessary. Your text messages, the timeline of your relationship with Jason, witness statements from people who observed your behavior at the dinner party. I felt the walls closing in around me. Witness statements. Tom and Michelle were pretty shocked by your comment about Eli looking like Jason. They'd be happy to testify about what they observed that night. The humiliation was complete. Not only had I destroyed my marriage, but I'd done it publicly, in front of people who would now forever see me as the woman who cheated on her husband and made jokes about her baby's paternity. Liam, please. I know I messed up, but please don't do this. I love you. I love our family. For the first time since he'd arrived, his composure cracked slightly. Do you, Brie? Because your actions for the past 6 months suggest otherwise. I was confused and lonely, and I made terrible choices. But I want to fix this. I want to fix us. He stood up, folder in hand, and looked down at me with something that might have been pity. Some things can't be fixed, Brie. Some trust, once broken, can't be repaired. I spent 4 days hoping I was wrong about what's been happening, but everything I've discovered just confirms what I already knew in my heart. Which is what? That you chose Jason over me a long time ago. You just never had the courage to admit it. He walked toward the door, then paused and turned back to me. You'll be served with papers tomorrow. I suggest you find a good lawyer. After he left, I sat alone in our apartment, surrounded by the wreckage of everything I'd thought I wanted. I'd been so focused on feeling unappreciated, on finding validation wherever I could get it, that I'd never stopped to consider what I was throwing away. Now it was too late. The man I'd married, the father of my child, the person who had loved me unconditionally for 3 years, was gone. And I had no one to blame but myself. The worst part was knowing that somewhere across town, Jason was probably waiting for me to call him, to finally choose him openly. But the thought of his voice, his comfort, his validation, now made me feel sick. I didn't want Jason. I wanted my husband back. But some choices, once made, can't be unmade. And some words, once spoken, can't be taken back. I was about to learn that lesson the hard way. The legal papers arrived by certified mail the next morning, just as Liam had promised. I signed for them with shaking hands, while Eli cried in his bouncer, as if he could sense the tension in the air. The official letterhead made everything feel terrifyingly real. Petition for legal separation and temporary custody order. I called in sick to work and spent the morning reading through the documents. Liam's lawyer had been thorough. Every detail of our separation was laid out in cold, legal language. Primary custody to Liam during weekdays. Supervised visitation for me on weekends until a psychological evaluation could be completed. Division of assets heavily in his favor due to my emotional infidelity and abandonment of marital duties. That phrase hit me like a slap. Abandonment of marital duties. Is that what I'd done? Had I really abandoned my marriage so completely that a judge would see it that way? My phone rang, interrupting my spiraling thoughts. It was my mother. Brianna, honey, I just heard from Sarah about these legal papers. What is Liam thinking? Has he lost his mind? I don't know, Mom. Everything's falling apart so fast. Well, you need to fight this. You can't let him take Eli away from you over some silly misunderstanding. Misunderstanding. If only it were that simple. I don't think it's a misunderstanding anymore, Mum. I think I really messed up. Nonsense. You made one little joke and he's acting like you committed adultery. Men are just too sensitive these days. Your father would have laughed it off. But even as my mother spoke, I could hear the doubt creeping into her voice. She'd seen the legal documents. She knew this was more serious than a joke gone wrong. After I hung up, I called the only lawyer I knew, a woman named Patricia Chen, who'd handled our house purchase 2 years ago. She agreed to see me that afternoon, squeezing me in as an emergency consultation. Patricia's office was in a sleek downtown building, all glass and steel and intimidation. She was a small woman with sharp eyes who listened without judgment as I told her my story, leaving nothing out this time. "Mrs. Cartwright," she said when I finished, "I'm going to be very direct with you. Your husband has built a strong case. The documentation he's gathered, the timeline he's established, the witness statements, it all points to an emotional affair that compromised your marriage and potentially your fitness as a primary caregiver. But I never physically cheated on him. Doesn't that count for something?" Emotional infidelity is increasingly recognized by courts, especially when children are involved. The question isn't whether you had sex with this other man. The question is whether you violated your marriage vows by giving another man the emotional intimacy that should have belonged to your husband. I felt sick. So what are my options? Honestly, limited. You could fight the custody arrangement, but given the evidence your husband has compiled, you'd likely lose and end up with even more restricted visitation. Your best bet is to accept the terms he's offering and hope that over time you can rebuild trust and renegotiate. What about counseling? What about trying to save the marriage? Patricia's expression softened slightly. "Mrs. Cartwright, your husband isn't just angry, he's done. This isn't a temporary separation while you work things out. This is the first step toward divorce. The sooner you accept that, the better you can protect yourself and your son." I left Patricia's office feeling like I was walking through a nightmare. Everything I'd taken for granted, my marriage, my home, daily access to my son, was being stripped away because of choices I'd made without fully understanding their consequences. That evening, I sat in my empty apartment trying to figure out how everything had gone so wrong so quickly. 6 months ago, I'd been a happy newlywed with a baby on the way. Now I was facing single motherhood, weekend visitation, and the complete destruction of the life I'd built. My phone buzzed with a text from Jason. "Heard about the legal stuff. I'm so sorry, Bree. This is all my fault. I should have stayed away." For the first time, I felt anger toward him. Real, burning anger. I called him immediately. "It's not all your fault," I said when he picked up. "But you're not innocent either." "Bree, No, let me talk. Liam told me what you said to him. About being in love with me since college. About waiting for me to leave him." There was a long pause. "He told you that? Were you lying?" Another pause, longer this time. "No, I wasn't lying." The admission hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd been expecting it. So this whole time, while you were being my supportive friend, you were actually trying to break up my marriage. It wasn't like that, Bree. I genuinely cared about you. I saw how unhappy you were. You saw an opportunity. You saw a new mother who was tired and overwhelmed and vulnerable, and you swooped in to be everything my husband wasn't. That's not fair. I was there for you when Liam wasn't. I listened when he was too busy with work. You manipulated me." The words exploded out of me with a force that surprised us both. "You made me dependent on your validation, your attention, your emotional support. You turned me against my own husband so gradually that I didn't even realize it was happening. Bree, please, I love you. I've always loved you. I hoped that maybe you felt the same way." "I don't know what I felt. That's the problem. You made me so confused about my own feelings that I destroyed my marriage over it. And for what? For you?" The silence on the other end of the line stretched out painfully. "I need you to stay away from me, Jason. Completely away. Don't text. Don't call. Don't show up at my door. I need to figure out how to put my life back together, and I can't do that with you in it." "Bree, wait." I hung up before he could finish. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe clearly. The fog of confusion and emotional manipulation was finally lifting, and I could see the situation for what it really was. I had allowed another man to slowly poison my marriage. I had chosen his validation over my husband's feelings. I had prioritized his attention over my family's stability, and now I was paying the price. But it was too late for regrets. The papers were filed, the lawyers were involved, and Liam had made his choice. All I could do now was try to minimize the damage and hope that someday, somehow, I could earn back even a fraction of what I'd lost. The next morning, I signed the separation agreement without contest. It felt like signing my own death warrant, but I knew I had no choice. I'd made my bed with lies and emotional betrayal. Now I had to lie in it. The courthouse was busier than I'd expected on a Tuesday morning. I sat in the hallway outside family court, clutching my purse and trying not to throw up. Patricia sat beside me, reviewing her notes one final time, though we both knew this hearing was just a formality. I'd already agreed to Liam's terms. "Remember," Patricia said quietly, "answer only what you're asked. Don't volunteer information. Don't try to justify your actions. The judge just wants to confirm that you understand and accept the terms of the separation." I nodded, though my hands were shaking. Across the hallway, Liam sat with his lawyer, a stern-looking man in an expensive suit. Liam looked tired but determined, and he hadn't looked at me once since I'd arrived. "Cartwright versus Cartwright," the bailiff called. We filed into the courtroom, and I felt like I was walking to my own execution. Judge Martinez was a middle-aged woman with kind eyes but a no-nonsense demeanor. She reviewed the paperwork quickly, then looked up at us. "This is a petition for legal separation with temporary custody arrangements," she said. "Mrs. Cartwright, do you understand the terms of this agreement?" "Yes, Your Honor." "You're agreeing to your husband having primary custody of your 3-month-old son during the week, with supervised visitation for you on weekends. You understand this arrangement was requested due to concerns about your fitness as a primary caregiver." The word stung, but I forced myself to answer. "Yes, Your Honor." "And you're waiving your right to spousal support and agreeing to a division of assets that heavily favors your husband?" "Yes, Your Honor." Judge Martinez frowned slightly. "Mrs. Cartwright, these terms seem quite unfavorable to you. Are you sure you don't want more time to consider this arrangement?" I glanced at Patricia, who nodded almost imperceptibly. We'd discussed this. Fighting would only make things worse and cost money I didn't have. "I'm sure, Your Honor. I accept full responsibility for the breakdown of my marriage." The judge studied me for a long moment, then looked at the evidence file Liam's lawyer had submitted. "I've reviewed the documentation provided by the petitioner. Mrs. Cartwright, emotional infidelity is a serious matter, particularly when children are involved. However, I want to make it clear that this custody arrangement is temporary. If you can demonstrate that you've addressed the issues that led to the situation, we can revisit the terms in 6 months." "Thank you, Your Honor." "I'm ordering both parties to attend co-parenting classes and individual counseling. Mrs. Cartwright, I'm also requiring you to have no contact with the individual named in these documents, Jason Bell, for the duration of this arrangement. Any violation of that order will result in further restrictions on your visitation rights." The gavel came down with a finality that echoed through my chest. It was over. My marriage, my daily access to my son, my life as I'd known it, all of it was officially gone. Outside the courthouse, Liam's lawyer approached Patricia with some final paperwork. I found myself standing alone with my husband for the first time since that terrible night when I'd admitted I didn't know if I loved another man. "Liam," I said softly, "I know you probably don't want to hear this, but I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything." Liam looked at me with profound sadness, not anger. Sorry doesn't undo the months I wondered why my wife preferred another man. I was stupid, I admitted. I threw away everything for a fantasy. "If you'd told me you felt lonely, I'd have fixed it. I loved you." "Loved," I echoed. "I can't trust someone who gave her heart away while wearing my ring." He walked away forever. I moved to a 1-bedroom, leaving our life behind. Supervised visits with Eli were humiliating. Mrs. Peterson watched every move. "No contact with Jason," I confirmed. "I miss my family, not him." 3 months post-separation, Sarah said at the store. "Eli's great. Liam's dating someone." "He deserves happiness," I replied sincerely. I wrote Liam an unsent letter of regrets, then tore it up. Apologies too late. 6 months after divorce, his lawyer called. Liam wanted more visitation for Eli's sake. Positive reports, completed counselling, more than I deserved. I'd prove worthy as Eli's mother, never repeating mistakes. Losing everything taught its value. I'd hold this chance tight,